To the Douglas Laboratories Educational Webinar Series. My name is Leslie Carter, and I'm a registered dietitian with Douglas Labs. Today we'll be discussing glutathione, the master antioxidant, with Dr. Don Colbert. Dr. Colbert will be answering questions at the end of the webinar, and these can be submitted through the GoTo toolbar. Now I have the pleasure of introducing Dr. Don Colbert. He is a board-certified in family practice and anti-aging medicine. He is the medical director of Divine Health Wellness Center in Orlando, Florida, where he has treated over 40,000 patients. Dr. Colbert is an internationally known expert and prolific speaker on integrative medicine. He is the radio host of a syndicated show, Dr. Colbert's Health Report. He has also been featured on Fox News, ABC World News, the Atlanta Journal, and many others. He is a best-selling author with over 40 titles in print, including The 7 Pillars of Health, Toxic Relief, Deadly Emotion, and many others. Dr. Colbert is on the Medical Advisory Board for the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. And now I'd like to turn it over to him.
Hey, this is Dr. Colbert, and today I'll be talking about the power of glutathione. And you're probably wondering, why is a medical doctor talking about glutathione? Well, I became aware of glutathione and the power of glutathione about 11 years ago when I wrote a book, Toxic Relief. And then about 7 years ago, I started using IV glutathione, and I truly saw the power of glutathione because I would have Parkinson's patients that would come in, and most of these patients had a tremor. They were real rigid, like the Tin Man. They had a poker face with no expression. They had a shuffling gait, and they literally walked like zombies. But after giving them IV glutathione, just a few minutes later, all of a sudden these zombies became alive. They started moving normally. They started, one fellow I'll never forget, he was so excited and he hadn't smiled in years. He started smiling, laughing, and running around the office, and he could only shuffle with no arm swing prior to that. And I was ecstatic. I said, my goodness, the power of IV glutathione is something like I've never seen before with any medicine or supplement or anything. But then unfortunately, a few hours later, he froze back up. He began to shuffle again. He developed his tremor again, his poker face, and literally he froze up. But again, we saw the glimpse of what elevated glutathione can do, or when the glutathione levels optimize, even though it's short term. So again, I started studying more about glutathione, and I was amazed at the versatility of this powerful antioxidant, as well as the powerful detoxification capabilities. First of all, what is glutathione? Well, it's an antioxidant. It's actually a tripeptide composed of glycine, glutamine, and cysteine, which are just amino acids, and it's known as the master antioxidant. Now, the good news is that we all produce glutathione. You don't have to take glutathione. In fact, glutathione, the supplement, is very poorly absorbed, and so again, the main way we get glutathione is through the foods that we eat, but you're going to find out at the end of the program some supplements that'll help. But the good news is we produce our own glutathione. The bad news is that there's many things that deplete our glutathione levels, like exposure to toxins and pollutants and even drugs and xenobiotics. Poor nutrition, the aging process really drains our glutathione. You'll see that in another slide. Chronic inflammation is like having a leak in your glutathione gas tank, as well as chronic inflammations or infections, chronic infections like HIV. Most HIV patients and AIDS patients have very low glutathione levels, chronic hepatitis C, and I check the glutathione levels of these patients. They invariably have low glutathione, as well as chronic EBV, chronic degenerative diseases, and it could be chronic arthritis, it can be rheumatoid arthritis, it could be Alzheimer's, it could be Parkinson's like I talked about, it can be just chronic heart disease, chronic liver disease, chronic kidney disease. They typically have low glutathione levels because it depletes the body of glutathione, just degeneration. Pollution will deplete your glutathione levels. Lack of sleep will deplete glutathione, as well as stress, excessive stress, not coping with stress, traumas and major life events, divorces, lawsuits, all of this. It depletes your glutathione levels. And especially toxins deplete the glutathione. And realize there's almost 70,000 industrial chemicals that are found in common products, with 1,000 new synthetic chemicals introduced every year. And our body uses up glutathione when it detoxifies these chemicals. The EPA estimates that the average American may be carrying about 700 industrial chemicals in their body. 700 chemicals. Well, guess what that's doing? It's lowering the glutathione level. A CDC report resulted from 2,500 screenings of Americans for 148 industrial chemicals. They found that significant quantities of these chemicals were found in the bloodstreams in every individual tested. Realize there's over 900 drugs that's been linked to liver damage and low glutathione levels as a result, including statin drugs. There's so many Americans on statins for high cholesterol, but the doctors don't realize it depletes glutathione. That's why a common thing we see as physicians is elevated liver functions. And that's why it's important to put these people on a glutathione boosting supplement, because it'll help to correct a lot of the liver function abnormalities. Hormone contraceptives, antibiotics, also chemotherapy drugs. The main drug in the drugs that cause cancer are your chemotherapy drugs. Yes, years after taking chemotherapy drugs, there's generally an increased risk of especially lymphomas and leukemias, and they deplete glutathione levels and affect the liver. Tylenol is the #1 cause of acute liver failure in the U.S., and Tylenol drains the glutathione. That's why what we give in the ER for acetaminophen or Tylenol overdose is N-acetylcysteine in very large doses. But I believe Tylenol should include a glutathione booster in every pill. Something inexpensive like N-acetylcysteine will help prevent a lot of this acute liver failure by simply boosting the glutathione levels. It's interesting that Columbia University School of Public Health estimates that 95% of cancer is caused by diet and excessive toxins. There's your toxins again, and again, with excessive toxins, it's generally associated with low glutathione levels. The glutathione levels in the red blood cells and white blood cells are decreased in aging adults. Now look at this graph. And the first column, the lighter column, is males, and the second are females. From age 20 to 40, look at the high levels there. Then look 40 to 60. As we age, our levels go lower. Now what's interesting to note is that women generally have higher glutathione levels than men, higher than men when they're younger. Now this is interesting. Well, women are not, they don't eat as much food generally as men. They're not as toxic generally as men as far as the food goes. And so it's interesting that women initially have higher glutathione levels. As we age, 40 to 60, both glutathione in men and women decrease. And then look at age 60 to 80. The females really drop their glutathione levels, and the males too, but not as much as the females. But again, we see that females are bioaccumulating these toxins like a fish. The bigger the fish, the more toxins, the lower the glutathione levels. And so women actually have lower glutathione levels as they age. Now what's interesting, typically glutathione levels decrease by 1% per year after the age of 21. And so again, a lot of people think after the age of 30 our health declines. Well, after the age of 21 is when your glutathione levels really decline. It's also interesting to note that many centenarians, or people that live to be over 100, generally have the glutathione levels of people 30 to 50 years of age. So I believe glutathione may be a major factor in helping adults live to be over 100. Now, the key functions of glutathione include, first of all, it increases energy levels. It increases deep REM alpha wave sleep, so it helps you sleep better, increases your energy. And a lot of patients that I see come in, and the main complaint they say is, Dr. Colbert, I'm exhausted. Well, keeping the glutathione levels optimized will increase the energy. Glutathione improves concentration and mental clarity. It decreases inflammation. Now, this is critical, since most degenerative diseases that most physicians treat are inflammatory in nature. You're going to learn how it decreases inflammation. It detoxifies the body from heavy metals, from many chemicals, toxins, and all known free radicals. It improves heart, lung, liver, and kidney function. Now, there's many doctors, especially anti-aging, that are waiting to use stem cells to rejuvenate or regenerate these organs, but why not optimize glutathione status and therefore help prevent diseases in the heart, the lungs, the liver, the kidneys, as well as the brain? Glutathione strengthens the immune system. It slows down the aging process. It permits increased levels of exercise as well as faster recovery from strenuous exercise. In other words, if you start exercising, so many people are so sore the next day, if you optimize glutathione levels, it's going to improve your recovery and decrease your soreness. Now, where does glutathione rank among antioxidants? Now, many nutritionists and researchers call it the #1 intracellular antioxidant because it's the most abundant intracellular antioxidant, and they call it the master antioxidant, and other researchers call it the mother of all antioxidants. It's responsible for recharging and recycling pretty much all the antioxidants, especially vitamin C, vitamin E, lipoic acid, CoQ10, superoxide dismutase, catalase, and even itself. It recycles itself so it can be used again to donate electrons to quench free radical reactions. Now, I've already discussed that. Now, how does this work? How does this work as the master antioxidant? Well, you see GSH is reduced glutathione. When you undergo oxidative stress, it donates an electron and becomes the reduced glutathione, which is the glutathione disulfide, or the GSSG. Now, what's important is glutathione needs selenium in order to work at its optimal capacity. But then glutathione, the oxidized glutathione is converted to a protein, a glutathione protein mixed disulfide, GSSP, that then requires selenium to be reduced back to glutathione so it can continue to donate electrons so that it continue to quench free radicals throughout the cell, throughout the tissues, throughout the body. Now, glutathione is not only the master antioxidant, it's also the master detoxifier in the body. It detoxifies heavy metals, including mercury, cadmium, lead, arsenic, and iron. And again, it's a gentle detoxification. I've used many different chelators in the past, and when we use powerful chelators, especially like DMSA, DMPS, you can get major detox reactions in those patients, and also you can shuttle the toxins into the CNS. But glutathione is a mild detoxifier. It binds to these metals similar to flies bind into fly paper, and it's able to bind these heavy metals and escort them out of the body. It also detoxifies solvents and chemicals and xenobiotics and pesticides, especially the organophosphates, which are the most common class of pesticides, as well as herbicides and fungicides. We all pretty much have pesticides in our bodies, and realize the 5 most common pesticides that we encounter on a daily basis are celery, as well as apples and peaches and blueberries and strawberries. And again, this enables us, even if we slip up and take non-organic produce, you can still detoxify these pesticides by optimizing your glutathione level. It also protects the cells against the damaging effects of radiation. Now, we've heard about the Fukushima power plant, with nuclear power plant, and the radiation going who knows where, to Hawaii and possibly to the West Coast. Well, a lot of people are keeping their supply of potassium iodine and taking, because you do want to protect your thyroid against thyroid cancer if you have a nuclear disaster, and who knows what's going to happen. But again, by optimizing your glutathione level, you're protecting every cell and tissue in the body against the damaging effects of radiation. Now, the secret of glutathione's detoxification power lies in the sulfhydryl groups. And these sulfhydryl groups are a sticky molecule that acts very similar to fly paper, trapping the toxins and escorting them out of the bodies. Now, a simple diagram is this, and what happens is we have these reactive oxygen species, or free radicals are formed from lipid peroxidation, from reactive oxygen species, peroxide, singlet oxygen. And so glutathione peroxidase is able to detoxify these peroxides and eliminate them out of the body, whereas the glutathione S-transferase is able to detoxify toxins and drugs and carcinogens, and then they're easily detoxified and escorted out of the body. So we need both the glutathione peroxidases to detoxify the peroxides and the transferases to detoxify the toxins and drugs and carcinogens. Now, glutathione is also very important for helping to control inflammation because we know that the majority of the chronic diseases are inflammatory in nature. Glutathione, when optimized, is able to lower the inflammatory markers. It decreases tumor necrosis factor alpha significantly. Some reports, as long as when you optimize the glutathione levels, it can reduce tumor necrosis factor alpha by as much as 61% after 2 months. It also can decrease C-reactive protein, and it also lowers nuclear factor kappa beta activation, which is that master inflammatory switch that causes inflammation to run rampant in the body. Now, how does glutathione protect the cells and reduce inflammation? Well, when glutathione levels become severely depleted, the liver cannot adequately detoxify chemicals, toxins, and heavy metals, which leads to an accumulation of toxin as well. When you accumulate toxins, you also increase inflammation in the body. When glutathione levels become severely depleted, free radicals accumulate, also leading to increased inflammation. Now, a study has found that the depletion of mitochondrial reduced glutathione in hepatocytes led to further enhancement of nuclear factor kappa beta activation as much as 2 to 4-fold. Now, what that's saying is when your mitochondrial glutathione levels in your liver cells become depleted, you will probably get a 2 to 4-fold increase in nuclear factor kappa beta activation, which correlates with generation of hydrogen peroxide. So again, you are causing tremendous inflammation when you're activating tremendous inflammation when the glutathione levels are low. But by, again, optimizing those levels, you are keeping that nuclear kappa, nuclear factor beta kappa in control or down so that it's not triggering all that inflammation. Now, glutathione is also very important for the immune system. It actually strengthens the immune system. It enables the immune system to function optimally, and it also activates those natural killer cells that are a first line of defense against cancer cells, and also it helps protect against viruses as well as bacteria. Now, it's interesting that studies have shown, researchers have shown that every cell in our body gets between 1,000 and used to say 10,000. Now, the newest fellowship, I'm going to the Fellowship for Integrative Cancer Therapy, and it was just a couple of months ago in Las Vegas, and one researcher said each cell now is getting between 1,000 and 1 million free radical hits every day. Now, can you imagine getting hit one time in the shoulder? Now think 1,000 times. Now think 1,000,000 times. Or think of being shot by a BB gun one time. Now think of 1,000 times. Now think of 1,000,000 times. Well, those people that are exposed to a lot of toxins, cigarette smokers, exposed to a lot of medications, they're aging, they're exposed to pollutants and smog, they're eating a terrible diet with lots of inflammatory foods and fried foods and trans fats and lots of sugar. They may be, that's similar to being hit 1,000,000 times, 1,000,000 free radical hits a day. So of course they're going to have lower glutathione levels and lower natural killer cell function. Glutathione is needed for the lymphocytes to multiply and differentiate in order to develop a strong immune response. Chronic viral infections as well as chronic bacterial infections are commonly associated with low WBC glutathione levels. And again, we check glutathione levels here in my office, and I find that my patients, especially with chronic hepatitis C or with HIV and AIDS and even Lyme disease, they typically have very low glutathione levels, and glutathione is critically important for rebooting that immune system and activating the immune system as well as the natural killer cells. Now, glutathione also increases energy levels when it is optimized. We typically have between 2 and 2,500 mitochondria in each of our cells in our body, which is critical for the production of ATP, our energy currency. Your fat cells may only have 2, but your heart muscle cells may have 2,500 mitochondria. And there was a study that they did a muscle biopsy of a 90-year-old man that showed that 95% of his mitochondria were dysfunctional, whereas a 5-year-old boy, when he had the muscle biopsy, had practically no damage to the mitochondrial DNA. Well, glutathione is important because it protects the mitochondria from free radical damage. It quenches those free radicals. It quenches the peroxide, hydrogen peroxide, the singlet oxygen, the other reactive oxygen species, and helps to restore mitochondrial function and thus increase energy by increasing ATP production. So I have seen a huge improvement in many of my elderly patients' energy levels just by optimizing their glutathione levels. I also commonly do genomic testing for glutathione, and the reason I do this is because if a person is not feeling better a few months after being on a glutathione supplement, or if their inflammation is not improving, or if their energy is not improving, or if they're still real toxic, still sick, and still have a lot of fibromyalgia symptoms, because I see many of my fibromyalgia patients have a mutation in their glutathione gene. But genomic testing for glutathione is important for chronically ill patients who are not improving with glutathione-boosting supplements. These are your fibromyalgia patients generally, or your chronic Lyme patients, or your patients with chronic renal failure, or chronic hepatitis C, or cirrhosis, or Alzheimer's, or Parkinson's. And we find that non-mutated glutathione genes enable the body to create and recycle glutathione, but when there are mutations in glutathione genes, it impairs the detoxification ability, and it's associated with low glutathione levels. Typically, when I check the blood work on these patients, they typically have low glutathione levels that do not rise normally, even with glutathione-boosting supplements. Now, I just had a patient a month ago that came in with a severe fibromyalgia, and she had severe dysbiosis in her GI tract and had developed this overgrowth of bacteria, and she wanted to be treated for that. And she had taken antibiotics, and it didn't clear the bacteria, so she wanted to know what to do. Well, this lady actually had an absent GSTM1 gene. Now, the GSTM1 is real important that's the glutathione S transferase M, that's important for the liver. That's the main glutathione conjugation pathway in the liver. It was out. So, of course, she was going to have a buildup of toxins. This lady was only in her early 40s, but she had fibromyalgia, she had all these gut issues, and she was toxic with a tremendous buildup. These patients generally go on to develop cancer because they simply cannot detoxify. The toxins and the free radicals are literally running rampant in their bodies, as well as the toxicity and the inflammation. Also, you see that GSTP1 is also important because that is in the brain. That's glutathione, the glutathione S transferase in the brain and in the lung. So these are important too, but to have an absent gene means tremendous toxicity. Now, we check glutathione RBC levels. I also check WBC levels and combinations. I had a patient just a month ago that came in with severe osteoarthritis. She was in her mid-60s and in a wheelchair and literally crippled up. So I checked her glutathione level, and it was 497. Now, normal according to the lab, this is LabCorp is 544 to 1,228. I find that similar to vitamin D, we just don't have our ranges proper still, because the normal range of vitamin D, they say, is anything over 32 is normal, whereas still we optimize the vitamin D level. The same with the glutathione. If you're going to have a level in the low 500s or mid 500s, it's still going to be too low. I find to optimize the level, we usually need to get up to around 900 or in the high 800s. And I feel that's more of an optimal level. It hasn't truly been established because very few doctors are even running these tests. But by boosting glutathione levels, I feel that we're going to see a tremendous decrease in inflammation and energy, as well as detoxification capabilities. And I haven't done a genomic test. Again, a lot of patients just are not going to be able to afford to have genomic testing or to have the glutathione test. It costs about $100 for the glutathione test, just from Quest or from LabCorp, but it measures the intracellular glutathione levels in the red blood cells. And so some people just won't afford that test, but it's a great test to have, and then you can see how your therapy is helping them. If it's not helping, then you may want to check the genomic test to make sure they don't have a mutation or literally an absence of the gene. Now, a test I love that measures antioxidant capability is the Spectrox. A lot of people are screening with these scanners that measure the carotenoids in the skin, which is good. That's a great little test to show people, what their carotenoid level is. But much more accurate is the SpectraCell Spectrox test that they actually take the white blood cells, and from what the rep told me, they expose them to peroxide, and they see how long it takes the white cells to die. And then they assign you a percent of what your Spectrox is. It should be 100%, means you have excellent antioxidant capabilities, but so many of my patients come in under 50, and that's very poor. But when we boost, I have found that when we boost the glutathione levels in these patients, it improves the Spectrox better than anything else, and it makes total sense because realize your glutathione is recycling all the other antioxidants. And so you're getting the biggest bang for focusing on the glutathione because it'll recycle the carotenoids, the CoQ10, the lipoic acid, the vitamin C, the vitamin E, the glutathione, the superoxide dismutase, the catalase, so it can be used over and over, as well as recycle itself. So this is a great measurement for free radical activity in the body. Now, they've done many, many studies on glutathione. In fact, if you look at PubMed, there's over 94,000 articles on the power of glutathione, and these are scientific articles. And what I do is we treat a lot of degenerative diseases, and we found that, again, it's real important to check these glutathione levels and to optimize them. One study showed the peripheral levels of glutathione and protein oxidation as markers in the development of Alzheimer's disease from mild cognitive impairment. Now, Alzheimer's, you don't just wake up one day with Alzheimer's, as you clinicians know. You go from normal brain function to mild cognitive impairment, maybe forgetting your keys, forgetting names, to eventually Alzheimer's disease where you don't forget your keys, you put them in the fridge or you put them in the oven or something like that. You put them in a weird place, you get confused. But again, they were checking the glutathione levels, and a large amount of evidence shows that the risk of mild cognitive impairment patients developing Alzheimer's disease increases every year after the diagnosis. That's why it's so important to keep that glutathione level optimized to decrease the risk of going on and developing the Alzheimer's, because again, the glutathione is also not only quenching free radicals, not only decreasing inflammation, but it's also detoxifying these toxins in the brain as well as heavy metals. Some experts believe that the risk of mild cognitive impairment patients progressing to Alzheimer's disease is 10 times greater. Now, reduced glutathione, which is GSH, plays a key role as an essential intracellular antioxidant in the defense of brain cells against oxidative damage induced by reactive oxygen species. High intracellular glutathione levels protect cells from reactive oxygen species insults by enzymatically reacting with reaction oxygen species. Now, this is an interesting graph here, and they were measuring the glutathione peroxidase activity in red blood cells from a control group, from mild cognitive impairment group, which is pre-Alzheimer's, and Alzheimer's patients. And cerebral tissue is particularly vulnerable to free radical damage because of its low content of antioxidants, its high content of polyunsaturated fats of the neuronal membranes, and the high oxygen requirements for its metabolism. Now, it's interesting, the control group, if you see their glutathione peroxidase activity, it's way up here, almost 13,500. The mild cognitive impairment group, it's down below 13,000, and the Alzheimer's group is down below 12,000. That's your glutathione peroxidase activity in the red blood cells. Now, again, if you were to do autopsies on those patients, when they die, you would find that the brain cells, especially in the cortex, would have even lower glutathione levels. Now, another study on Parkinson's patients, and they now recognize that Parkinson's disease is a disorder due to nigrel, or substantia nigra glutathione. It's low glutathione levels in the substantia nigra. And amino acid analysis of autopsied human brains showed reduced glutathione, or GSH, content significantly lower in the substantia nigra than in other brain regions. And reduced glutathione was virtually absent in the substantia nigra of patients with Parkinson's disease. And this is a fascinating graph here because it shows the contents of total and reduced glutathione. Now, again, the total glutathione is a combination of reduced glutathione and oxidized glutathione. So some of you are going to look at these numbers and say, oh, well, that's not a big difference. But when you realize that the total glutathione is a combination of reduced and oxidized, you'll understand. But what's interesting, if you look first of all at epilepsy, these patients, when they had the biopsy, they actually had a brain biopsy, they actually had higher glutathione levels in their frontal cortex of 2.68. The controls, on average, had 1.50, and then various neurological disorders had a little high, again, 2.33. But Parkinson's was lower. They had 1.29. And again, when you look at the Parkinson's, that's in the frontal cortex. When you look in the substantia nigra, so it's not that big a difference. But then that's the total glutathione, which includes the reduced and the oxidized. But then you look at the just the reduced glutathione, which is the lower figure. So in the frontal cortex, the patients with Parkinson's in the frontal cortex only had 0.5. And the normal is 1.50, which is the control. Now you look where in the substantia nigra, where's the part where's the degeneration in Parkinson's patients. Now look at how much glutathione they had there. The total glutathione in the Parkinson's brain in the substantia nigra was, in the controls first, was 1.22, but in the Parkinson's patient was 0.82. You say, oh, that's not that much of a difference. But again, realize that 0.82 is a combination of reduced and oxidized glutathione, but now you look at just the reduced glutathione, the GSH, and the Parkinson's substantia nigra is 0.00. So again, these patients practically had no glutathione in their substantia nigra, and they had very low glutathione in their frontal cortex, as well as their occipital cortex, as well as in their cerebral cortex, as well as in their caudate nucleus. So it's amazing how it especially affects the substantia nigra, but also there was low glutathione levels throughout the brain. Now it makes sense because realize Parkinson's disease is a neurodegenerative disease, but it's also an inflammatory disease. And it's interesting, they just came out this week talking about one of the main causes of ALS is a deficiency of these recycling proteins. Well, again, that is true, but again, why don't we optimize glutathione levels in the brain, and therefore we can many times quench the free radicals, detoxify the brain, decrease inflammation, and many times prevent altogether the Parkinson's, the Alzheimer's disease. Now I'm using glutathione boosters and optimizing the level, and I don't have to use the IV glutathione near as much. Now another study, another group of patients that have very low glutathione are my HIV, my hepatitis C, and my AIDS patients. Serum selenium, plasma glutathione, which is reduced, GSH, and erythrocyte glutathione peroxidase levels in asymptomatic versus symptomatic HIV infection. Now, the essential trace element selenium acts as an integral constituent of the antioxidative enzyme glutathione peroxidase. In other words, you really need to take selenium about 100 to 200 micrograms a day in order to optimize your glutathione function. Now, the glutathione peroxidase detoxifies hydrogen, which detoxifies hydrogen or reduced glutathione. The oxidized form, glutathione disulfide, in turn is regenerated by the glutathione reductase, which uses NADPH as a redox equivalent. In other words, it donates the electron to the glutathione glutathione disulfide, and it again becomes reduced glutathione, so it can be used again to quench free radical reactions. Now, the glutathione peroxidase activity and the plasma self-hydro, reduced glutathione in critically ill patients with AIDS, asymptomatic HIV infected patients, and healthy controls. Now it's interesting, you look at selenium in AIDS patients, the selenium level was quite low at 46.2 compared to the healthy controls at 90.5. And you look down here at the glutathione levels, and the AIDS were 12.4, and in the healthy controls were 18, whereas the asymptomatic HIV were in between there for both the selenium and the glutathione. So in other words, what we find is with most everyone with any chronic infection, especially HIV, especially AIDS, especially chronic hepatitis C, and even chronic bacterial disease like Lyme, we generally find low glutathione levels. And I think if you can check that level and then optimize that level, and check it a few months later and make sure it's optimized, then I think you're going to see an improvement in these patients. Now, it may not clear them, but you'll see an improvement in their energy level. You'll improve their immune system, their detoxification capabilities, their antioxidant capabilities, etc. Now, what are some ways to boost glutathione? Well, it's interesting. There are quite a few ways to boost glutathione. As I was reading a study, the West Berlin's Winter Swim Club. To be a member of this swim club, you had to go swim in ice cold water for 5 to 10 minutes once a week for the entire winter. And they actually measured these people's glutathione levels before and then after doing this, and they found that by swimming in ice cold water 5 to 10 minutes once a week will generally boost glutathione levels by about 25%. Now, what's interesting is some other researchers have found that taking a cold shower every day for about 5 to 10 minutes will also boost your glutathione levels. The only problem is try and convince your patients that. They will resist you, and I've tried it myself. I do not enjoy, especially during the winter, taking a cold shower for 5 to 10 minutes every day. I won't do it. I refuse. And most of your patients will also refuse, but you're asking one inexpensive way to boost glutathione, taking a cold shower every morning. Also, we can take in sulfur foods. The sulfur foods that help boost glutathione are simply onions and garlic and your cruciferous veggies, including your broccoli and cauliflower, as well as cabbage and Brussels sprouts and watercress, as well as organic egg yolks, as well as sulfur supplements like MSM. It's interesting, too, that undenatured whey protein years ago was able to raise glutathione levels by about 35%. The only thing is you cannot use a blender. If you use a blender, you destroy or damage those fragile proteins which help to boost the glutathione level, so you'll have to shake it or stir it, which in turn makes it clumpy, so it's a little tougher to drink, and so patients may complain about that, but undenatured whey protein does indeed boost glutathione levels on average about 35%. Lipoic acid is also a great booster of glutathione, and lipoic acid is also good with your diabetic patients. It improves insulin resistance. It also helps prevent and sometimes reverse diabetic neuropathy. And again, it's the dose. They generally recommend 200 to 300 milligrams of lipoic acid twice a day, and it's a great supplement to help with that, but also it can lower your blood sugar. Another supplement that helps boost glutathione is simply milk thistle. Milk thistle or silymarin in a dose, again, about 200 milligrams twice a day, is able to boost the glutathione levels by about 30%. It's also a powerful protectant for the liver, and it helps prevent toxicity from medicines like your statins and other insults like Tylenol and things like that. Another supplement that's very inexpensive that most every patient can afford is simply N-acetylcysteine. And studies have shown that if you take as much as 8,000 milligrams of N-acetylcysteine a day, you can boost your glutathione level by 85%. Now again, that's a great increase in glutathione, but that's a lot. You usually don't have to take quite as much, and you can combine your different supplements. Like, for example, for years, many of the anti-aging physicians have been combining N-acetylcysteine at about 200 milligrams twice a day with milk thistle, 200 milligrams twice a day with lipoic acid, 200 to 300 milligrams twice a day with selenium, 100 micrograms twice a day. And by combining those, you're protecting the liver. Many patients with hepatitis C have had a normalization of their liver enzymes, and some have actually cleared the hepatitis C. And so we've been using that protocol for years, but it also, every one of those help to boost the glutathione levels. And when you combine them together, they actually work synergistically. So that's a great, inexpensive way to boost the glutathione level. Also, Douglas Labs has a wonderful sublingual L-glutathione, and realize a lot of people simply have a mutation in that glutathione gene, and giving them all of these different supplements that are glutathione boosters may not even boost the glutathione levels, and for those patients, they actually need the glutathione, but glutathione is very poorly absorbed in the GI tract. So the sublingual glutathione is an excellent way to receive the glutathione, especially in those patients that have the mutation in the gene and that their glutathione levels are not being optimized with the above mentioned ways. Now, in summary, the key functions of glutathione simply, it increases your energy. Your patients after, now it doesn't work immediately. It's not like a 5-hour energy or a Red Bull or two or three espressos, but it's going to take about 2 months for them to see this boost in energy, so they need to be patient, need to explain it. Glutathione will also, usually after a couple of months, will increase the deep REM alpha wave sleep. It helps improve many patients' concentration and mental clarity. But one thing we find is when some patients start taking this glutathione booster, some may have some detox reactions, so you may have to use lower doses or have them skip a day. And it's just especially in your chronic fatiguers, your fibromyalgia patients, your patients that are smokers, those are toxic patients. So you have to detox them very slowly and have them drink a lot of water, especially alkaline water, or they're going to be calling you up over and over saying, hey, what you gave me is making me sick, I've got a headache, or I feel horrible, where they're detoxing. And some people are actually allergic to these sulfur compounds, and we have to use a method to desensitize them from the sulfur. Also, when you boost glutathione levels, you decrease inflammation. This is so, so important because by decreasing inflammation, you are preventing most every degenerative disease. It detoxifies the body from heavy metals without the side effects of all these chelators. It also detoxifies the body from many chemicals, xenobiotics, toxins. It minimizes the effects of radiation, and it detoxifies and quenches all known free radicals. It also improves the function of the heart, the lung, the liver, the kidneys. It strengthens the immune system. It slows down the aging process, and it permits increased levels of exercise as well as facilitates faster recovery from strenuous exercise. Now, as far as we're going to be taking questions and answers, but I wrote a book years ago called Toxic Relief, and I just finished the revision, the 2011 edition, which will be out October the 1st, 2011, and I talk a lot about the power of glutathione. So now we're ready to take questions and answers.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Colbert. That was a great presentation. We do have
Thank
some
you.
time for a few questions. If you do have questions, you can go ahead and submit them now on the go-to toolbar. I'm going to go ahead with the first question. It's, how does glutathione relate to CoQ10 regarding mitochondrial health?
Well, again, CoQ10 is very important, and again, Dr. Stephen Sinatra says CoQ10 is probably one of the most important supplements for mitochondrial health, especially for the heart. And again, we've used high-dose CoQ10 for Parkinson's patients, but we have to use about 1,200 milligrams. Now we have the new ubiquinol, where we don't have to use as much. But again, I like to tell people we like to use as many of these antioxidants as we can. And when I use antioxidants, the master antioxidant, the mother of all antioxidants, the most important is glutathione. It's like having Michael Jordan on your team. CoQ10 is good, but he's not quite as good as Scottie Pippen. And he's certainly not Michael Jordan. But again, CoQ10 is a very good antioxidant, especially if you have congestive heart failure, weak heart, arrhythmias. Then you want to especially add that CoQ10. Check your levels, optimize the levels of CoQ10. I check CoQ10 blood levels here in my office. I optimize those levels. I give them D-ribose. That helps to fuel the heart. I give them carnitine. I give them fish oil. I give them magnesium. But I also boost their glutathione levels. Again, they all work together. And when you put all those antioxidants together with a good multivitamin, it combines the vitamin C, the lipoic acid, the vitamin E, the pine bark, the grape seed. The more antioxidants you can throw in the mix, the better off you are, because they're going to get recycled. Because the neat thing about glutathione, it recycles those antioxidants, so they're reused over and over and over again to quench free radical reactions. And remember, every cell in your body gets between 1,000, and we used to think 10,000. Now they're saying 1 million free radical hits every day. Now, can you imagine being hit 1 million times? Well, those smokers and those people eating all that trans fat, they're getting hit in their cells about 1 million times a day with free radicals. And they're the ones that have the least antioxidant protection and the lowest glutathione levels, typically.
Okay. The second question I have is, I have heard pterostilbene can increase our body's production of glutathione by potentiating the NRF2 activity. Is this true, and can you explain how this works?
Well, the pterostilbene is very good, and I love to add that with resveratrol. And again, here's more antioxidants we're adding to the mix. I'm not a biochemist, and again, I'm a clinician. I know what works. And resveratrol and pterostilbene are very good. They work synergistically. They're powerful antioxidants. They help to quench free radicals, and they work synergistically together. And again, when you add that in the mix, you're just getting even more antioxidant protection. The more, the better. But again, is it a Michael Jordan of antioxidants? No. Will it boost glutathione? Possibly. How much? We need studies. That'd be a great study to do and measure how much it increases glutathione. I hope it increases it more than, standing in a cold shower. Okay.
Yes. Okay. Do you recommend glutathione IV or oral supplements for detoxifying heavy metals, especially mercury and lead?
Very good question. And again, I would love to give everyone IV glutathione, but most people just simply can't afford it. And but again, it's a great way to detoxify the body of heavy metals. You can use any one of these glutathione boosters that we've mentioned. It mainly depends on the patient's how much money they have to spend. If a person doesn't have hardly any money, you simply have them go to the health food store, get some N-acetylcysteine. That's like having the Ford Escort of glutathione boosters. But then if they have money, then they can start combining these different antioxidants, the milk thistle, the lipoic acid, the N-acetylcysteine, all the different ones, the alpha-lipoic acid all together, because then they're going to get the maximum bang for their buck, and they're going to really boost the glutathione levels, as they will see when they check their levels. They check them when they come in, and then check them about 3 months later, and you'll see that glutathione level increasing dramatically, typically.
Okay. Somebody would like to know, what is a good daily dose to maintain glutathione levels?
Okay, and again, everyone's different because you don't know unless you check the level. And for your sick patients, especially fibromyalgia, they're going to typically have very low levels. You're going to have to start them out low and go slow, or they're going to detox. They're going to have detox reactions on you, and they're going to be calling you and bugging you and say, you made me even sicker. And I've had it done before. So you've got to go real slow on those patients, start them with a real low dose. And again, it depends on how much money they have. If they only have a little money, start them on a little NAC. Now realize too, if a person has a lot of yeast, you put them on NAC, you're going to get a yeast bloom. They're going to have all kind of gut issues, a lot of bloating, a lot of gas from their candida. So that's why you have to work with different glutathione supplements and check the level, and then recheck it a few months later, and then start low and go slow and find out what works best for the patient.
Okay. What is the effect of increasing glutathione levels in patients with stage 4 cancer and the impact of using it with chemo and radiation?
Oh, very good question. And again, most every patient, I'm treating a lot of cancer patients now, but again, I tell them I will co-manage them. I'm not giving them unrecognized therapies here that they could take my license away. So I co-manage them with an oncologist, or many of my patients go out of the country and are treated nutritionally. But what I do is I check the glutathione levels, and invariably patients with cancer, especially stage 3 and stage 4, have low glutathione levels. If they're taking chemo, I have them say, do not take your glutathione boosting supplement the day before chemo, the day of chemo, the day after chemo, but every other day take it. Now, your oncologist will say, you got to get off all antioxidants. They can't take any antioxidants. But nowhere does it show in any of the mechanisms of chemotherapy agents where the chemotherapeutic agent works by, through oxidation of the cells. It all generally works on the cell cycle. It could be M phase, or it could be S phase, or whatever. So again, most likely they could take the glutathione booster even during chemo, but because of possibly protecting the tumor or the cancer from the chemotherapeutic agent, we always take them off the day before, the day of, the day after, just to be safe, so that the oncologist doesn't come back and say, yeah, because of you and because they were on this supplement, that's because they got worse, not realizing that their chemotherapy is lowering their glutathione even more. So every time they have a chemotherapeutic session, that glutathione level drops more. So we want to resuscitate that, bring it back, But we don't want to be blamed because a lot of people are going to get sick anyway and sicker anyway. And so we don't want an oncologist coming back and blaming us that, hey, because they're on our supplement, they died. So that's why we take them off of it, but, during the chemo sessions, the day before and the day of, the day after. That's just to be safe.
Okay. It looks like we have a listener that is interested in the very cold shower question. So they would like to know how much would a very cold shower increase glutathione?
Well, again, it's very similar to the Berlin Winter Swim Club, around approximately 25% by just simply taking a cold shower every morning. And it's a great way for those people that are low in finances. And some macho men will just do it to brag about it, say, hey, I'm able to take a cold shower every morning for 10 minutes. Beat that. But as a result, see, a lot of people go to these health clubs. They have these cold plunges, and you go in the jacuzzi, then you go in the cold plunge. That cold plunge, they're actually boosting their glutathione levels. It's a good deal. So I'd encourage you, if you can stand it, do it. It's great.
Okay. And then what is the dose of selenium as well as vitamin C that you recommend every day to complement the support of glutathione?
Good question. What we usually recommend with with selenium is about, around 100 micrograms up to 200 micrograms is a good dose. As far as vitamin C, about 500 to 1,000 milligrams is fine.
Okay.
You can go higher, of course, but adequate is usually 500 to 1,000 milligrams.
Correct. Okay. What lab and panels do you use to check glutathione?
Well, I use here in my office the LabCorp. They have just an RBC glutathione level. I also will use SpectraCell. They have a WPC glutathione level they run, as well as a Spectrox, which measures your free radicals or oxidation going on in your system, which is a great test. I love that test. As well as I use the Genova's genomic testing for the GST M1 and GST P1 gene mutations, because they have that mutation that they may need, depending on the severity of the mutation, if they're deleted, they're going to need probably the actual glutathione, like the sublingual.
Okay, and then how often should someone test for those levels?
Well, what I normally do is it takes at least 60 days to see a boosting of the levels significantly, so I usually do it about every 3 or 4 months. It is a little pricey for some patients, so again, 3 to 6 months would be great. But they will see it as time goes on, especially about 3 months. They will start to feel the effects, because as the inflammation decreases, as those free radicals are quenched, they're just going to feel better. They're going to have less aches and pains, less joint aches, less muscle soreness, better muscle recuperation with exercise, more stamina. It's just amazing. By boosting glutathione, most everything starts to improve.
Okay, somebody would like to know, what about turmeric powder extract, using that with glutathione?
Oh, turmeric is excellent. It's a great anti-inflammatory. It's a great antioxidant. I love turmeric. In fact, I take turmeric. I eat curry at least twice a week because of the tremendous anti-inflammatory effects. I think it'd be great. I mean, it's just another wonderful anti-inflammatory that, by the way, helps protect you from Alzheimer's disease. It helps quench free radicals and helps prevent, oxidation of LDL cholesterol. It also is great for arthritis. It's just, we have so many tremendous things. The newest thing with turmeric is it blocks cancer at 12 different stages of cancer development, which is, everyone should be taking turmeric every day just for its cancer protection effects and cancer prevention effects.
Okay, and this will be our last question. What about contrast hydrotherapy, hot or cold, a traditional naturopathic therapy? Have you used that, and are you familiar with it?
Oh, absolutely. That's great. And again, what's interesting is a lot of these naturopathic therapies that have been around for hundreds of years, literally the benefits we're realizing now was because they boost glutathione levels. And a lot of these, especially their cold therapy, and it's interesting, they just came out and they've discovered, I was listed at my cancer, my fellowship for integrative cancer therapy. We had one of the Gerson Institute people that were over the Gerson Institute at our lecture, and he lectured one afternoon. And one of the things they do at Gerson is they give their cancer patients, a coffee enema 4 times a day. Well, they've discovered that a coffee enema will increase glutathione level between 600 and 700%. So for you guys who don't want to take the cold shower or don't want to take supplements, you can just do a coffee enema, but not Starbucks. It needs to be organic coffee, and that's another way to boost glutathione level. But yeah, that's absolutely right. Your naturopathic principles are wonderful. We love our naturopaths. We want to encourage them to keep doing their thing with the hydrotherapy.
Okay. Well, I definitely would like to thank Dr. Colbert for a wonderful presentation. It was very informative. And I'd also like to thank everyone for attending. Just remember that you can find a recording of the webinar starting tomorrow on douglaslabs.com, and also watch for details for our next month's webinar on our website as well, and that's www.douglaslabs.com. Thank you.